so people understand that this book is a blend of fiction and nonfiction. The fictional part is the Forest Magic School, but the nonfiction is everything that they learn when they're at Forest Magic School. After that part, we start off with your Ori and your breath. So our Ori is our divine head in Yoruba spirituality, and it refers to the fact that we ourselves have higher knowledge within us that we can tap into. It doesn't have to come externally. And as you meditate, pay attention to your breath, take care of yourself, you become stronger and more connected to your Ori. It's also connected to the Yoruba Orishas, which is why there's that similarity between Ori and Orishas. In Yoruba spirituality, we believe that actually humans can be their own form of Orisha, but it takes dedication to your own evolutionary journey. So I help the young mystics connect with their Ori, and I let them know that it's important for them to trust their own instincts first. I'm a guide and an author sharing my perspective, but they themselves already know a lot, and it's in our ancestral DNA. The second chapter is time travel, and this is an opportunity for young mystics to go discover different countries in the diaspora, such as, yes, you want to go discover too. In this book, we go to Brazil, we go to Ghana, we talk about Cuba, because it's all connected to African spirituality. A lot of the spirituality in Brazil, like Candomblé and Cuba, Santeria, comes from Yoruba spirituality. And even Yoruba spirituality comes from Kemetic spirituality as well. So we travel to different regions of the diaspora. Chapter 3 is a celebration of the sun, melanin, and the elements, because the orishas are actually embodiments of the elements. It's really as simple as that. So when we feel the wind blowing across our cheek, that could be like Oya, the orisha of wind and thunder and lightning, giving us a kiss. Yemoja or Yemaya, the Orisha of the oceans, which is why we often give offerings to the oceans, and there's a special day where we honor Yemaya. So I explain and introduce that topic to the young mystics, and also celebrate the power of melanin within ourselves. Like many might not know that the melanin has the power to create electricity. So it's a celebration of this is awesome to have this. All humans have melanin, but to have concentrated forces of it actually makes us even more powerful. Chapter 4 is my astrological side that comes out. I talk about the different zodiac signs as well as the planets, but I link them to the orishas because a lot of times we got taught that it's the Greeks and the Romans who were the ones who introduced us to astrology, but they studied it in ancient Egypt. And there were even more than 12 zodiac signs in ancient Egypt. So I have studied and gone to ancient Egypt. Well, I call it ancient Egypt, but current day Egypt. I've gone to the temples and the pyramids and everything. Also, there's the Nubian village. Definitely would have to go there with Nubia. I cannot wait. I considered even buying property there. I was like, ooh, ooh, like this village you did not show us about because people look like us are even darker than me there. OG Egyptians actually come from present day Sudan. Now, chapter 5 is the Orisha party, which is completely connected to my younger self, who went to Atlanta International School and took Latin as a course. Pre-decolonization time, and my professor was like, "We're gonna have a toga party. Choose your favorite god or goddess to dress up as." So I dressed up as Aphrodite. Thought it was so cool. And okay, she's cool. But years later, I found out that the OG Aphrodite is Oshun. I love Oshun. I had tea today that was called Oshun's Kiss. And so when I found out that Oshun was the OG Aphrodite and that we don't talk about her that way, that she's starting to become more popularized thanks to Beyonce embodying her and things like that. But I was like, ooh, in this book, instead of a toga party, I'm going to do an Orisha party. So my younger self was so happy. So the young mystics get to dress up as their favorite Orisha. Chapter 6 is called Cosmic Clocks and the Tawe Tree of Time. It's inspired by my friend Ethel, who is from Cameroon. Her name is Ethel Tawe. So we have contributors in this book as well. And so she contributes and explains the concept of time to the young mystics. In African spirituality, is not linear. You can connect with your ancestors. Everything is interconnected like a tree's roots. And so she helps them understand that. Chapter 7, as you speak, you create. That is the power of our words. A lot of African spirituality is oral storytelling. It's passed down orally. It's one of the reasons this book was really important. The main feedback I've received from people is, wow, it's so rich, it's so thorough, it's so deep, and it's because I actually don't know. Let's pray that more publishers give these opportunities to Black authors to tell these stories for children, but just in case they don't, I had to put as much as I could in it, honestly. Because it's true that while storytelling and oral transmission is great, it could lead to us losing some things documented, which could then make it hard for people to believe that the roots of a lot of what I talk about spiritually come from the motherland because it hasn't been written and documented. So we talk about the power of words, the power of tongue, the power of affirmations in chapter 8, chapter 7. And then chapter 8 means infinity. And we talk about resources and abundance in chapter 8 and how in African spirituality and African culture, we do like bartering, a lot of bartering, instead of always paying in cash. Especially in older times, but still in the villages now, there's a lot of bartering. So if someone needs sugar and someone else needs bread, they can trade instead of having to exchange financially. It also highlights how African women are the original entrepreneurs and should be celebrated and revered and also ideally aided so that it doesn't feel like such a pressure because they keep their family and villages going. And then chapter 9, Ascend and Expand, is the cumulative chapter. The scholars have made it through the 9 weeks and they are celebrating everything they've learned while realizing it's just the beginning. So at the end, there's like a resource page where I keep the journey going and encourage scholars to research way more, like the pyramids of Giza, hieroglyphics, the magic of the number 9 in African numerology, the Nubian village, the kinetic yoga poses, the mermaid temple in Vietnam. There's so much more for them to learn, and so I want this to be a guide that they can continue to go to, and then later they could be inspired to write like volume 2, their own type of, get more specific in their niche of what they want to know because they already have this foundation. Thank you for asking about the table of contents. Okay, so I will read the introduction and chapter 1. Their child is so happy. Author's note. And shout out to Nova and Remy. This is You're With Me in Spirit. And merci les enfants. What if I told you the magic you've been looking for already exists within yourself? My name is Dosivia Trenu, and I am a daughter of the continent now known as Africa. In many African communities, cultural tales and beliefs are passed down orally through storytelling. In this book, I invite you into a special wonderland. You'll learn about Africa's magic and wisdom through the worlds of 2 fictional characters, which means I made up their existence with my imagination, attending Forest Magic School, Yawa and Kosi. Yawa and Kosi are the middle names of my actual children, Nova and Remy. What they look like. My children. This is when they were a little younger. So my daughter is 8, she'll be 9 on March 3rd, and my son just turned 6. So yay. And Yawa means born on a Thursday in the Togolese language, as well as Ghanaian. And Kosi means born on a Sunday. Okay, let's keep going. So they're the middle names of my actual children, Nova and Remy, and this book is inspired by the adventures we had together while living on the African continent, as well as the lessons we've learned and continue to learn each day. It's my dream that every child interested in their melanin magic will be able to visit the countries of Africa and feel at home there. To the young mystic reading this, keep in mind that while Yawa's and Kosi's adventures at Forest Magic School exist as a figment of our imagination, the teaching in this mystical forest, including what the forest scholars learn in their classes, can be applied to your life, no matter where you are. You're reading this for a reason. you're a scholar at Forest Magic School too. Whether you live near a forest or are thinking about a forest in your mind, you're also learning the teachings, and the teachings are learning you. So travel along, forest friend. You can teleport with the power of your mind. You can create the future. You can revisit the past, and you can embrace the present. Your ancestors knew and did this, and you can too. Melanin Magic is an invitation for you to travel to a spiritual world and be part of it in your own unique way. If you don't yet know what African spirituality is, my intention is that by the end of this book, you'll feel more familiar with it. Enjoy the journey. Ready? Let's go. Okie dokie. Prelude. The Magic Portal. Yawa and Kusi had a feeling that by the time they returned from their grandparents' home in the forest, they view their lives with a new set of eyes. The siblings had been dreaming of this day for as long as they could remember, and now they were entering the portal, the ancestral portal, their parents loved to call it. Their parents were quite excited about Kusi's and Yawa's birthdays, which had taken place the day before. Yawa and Kusi were both born on the same day, June 6th, but 2 years apart. For this reason, combined with their striking similarities, their friends and family nicknamed Yawa and Kusi the Almost Twins. Yawa had just turned 11, and Kusi was now 9. Their mother often reminded them that their birthday, or solar return, symbolized a rite of passage, and that no one was better to usher them into their solar new year than their grandparents. Yawa and Pussy were off to the Forest Magic School in the village of Bambo, in the heart of the Ivorian forest, on the western side of the African continent. That's where Maggie and Pepe lived, and that's where Yawa and Pussy were going to explore over the next 9 weeks. And through reading this African spirituality guide, you too can join them at Forest Magic School. Forest Magic School is a mystical summer school where people come from all over the African continent and the diaspora to learn about their roots. Diaspora refers to the spread of people away from their native homeland. So a lot of us here in the audience are from the diaspora because in this case, many forest scholars have ancestors who once lived in Africa and who left the continent by force or by choice. So we know about the transatlantic enslavement trade, that's by force due to colonizers coming and displacing painfully humans from Africa and forcing them onto boats and bringing them to the Americas and the Caribbean. But in the case of my parents, they left by choice because they, yeah, their parents lived in Africa, but they, in a way, were coerced because they got scholarships by the Europeans, and that got them out of the African country, but African continent by choice. And they had children, and they didn't teach me my native language. It's kind of painful, but I found my way back home. Now the forest scholars were returning, and in a way, their ancestors were returning too. So I actually think it's my grandparents who got me back home because I conceived my son in my grandparents' home. That means I got pregnant when I was in my grandparents' home, and I felt like my grandfather was like, "You're not going to raise 2 kids in New York. You're going to get your butt back home, and it's going to be great." And I was like, "Okay, I'll listen to you." And fun fact, my son Remy, born on the exact same day as my grandfather, down to the day of the week. So yeah, that's a great sign from my grandfather right there. Remy Kosi, September 23rd, 1923 was when he was born, and then September 23rd, 2018 is when my son was born. The children and preteens who made their way to Forest Magic School each summer came from different regions of the world. They were called forest scholars, and they attended the school to explore the universe of the West African forest and to learn about African spirituality. And they were also here to make some forest friends. Kosi, what should we do first? Yawa asked her brother as they parked their bikes beneath their grandparents' welcoming treehouse. Yawa and Kosi admired their surroundings. Their grandparents' home felt so grounded in nature and free. They could hear the drums beating in the distance. They loved seeing the earth's red soil, and they felt safe, surrounded by greenery. They admired the butterflies that fluttered by and the playful monkeys that spontaneously greeted them from the tree's branches. We should leave an offering for the ancestors, Pussy calmly responded, to thank them for bringing us here and to let them know we'll need their help and guidance on this journey. Absolutely, Yawa replied as she pulled out mangoes and water from her backpack. So, an offering is a symbolic or physical presence that we give to our spirit guides or ancestors. So, even when we pour water onto the floor with intention, that can be viewed as a libation, an offering, because our ancestors, since they're buried in the ground, it's like remembering them and activating their energy for protection. So, when I make it safely, even before flying on a flight or something, I can pour some water, and when I arrive, I can pour some water. It's like, thank you, ancestors. When I'm celebrating my birthday or a big event, same thing, really at any moment, because I'm constantly thinking about them. But you can also have offerings on your altar, which is talked about in the book, offerings near your favorite tree. It's up to you to figure out as you get more and more connected with your ancestors what form of offering feels good to you. As she poured water onto the rust-colored soil, Yawa heard a familiar voice coming from their grandparents' backyard. Are these my magically melanated mystics who've just arrived? Yes, it's us, Kosi and Yawa replied in unison to Mani. Then, as if by magic, Papi appeared from behind the garden's rosebush, holding a tray of glasses filled with bisap and ginger juice. Bisap is the Ivorian and Togolese West African French word for hibiscus juice. Wizon, Papi said. Wizon means welcome in the Iwe, pronounced Ive, language of Togo, which is where Papi and Mami spent most of their lives before moving to the bamboo forest. Everyone's eyes filled with tears of joy. They ran to one another and fell into a warm embrace. The mango tree's leaves quietly provided them with shade, and it even seemed to smile back at them. And so the adventure began. After dinner, the almost twins and their grandparents looked at family photos on the wall of the cabin house. Pepe had built the house by hand with the help of the village 35 years ago. In the bamboo forest, and in many West African communities, people rarely did things alone. The village was always there to help. One big community and ecosystem, just like the forest. When I come to DC, I feel like that. Like I'm staying at my friend Bree's house. You should have seen how she welcomed me yesterday. She had my favorite fruit ready for me, like my favorite items. I drink great tea. So I love that Black people, African descendants, keep this idea of it takes a village. We don't have to do things on our own. I hope we continue this, even if we live in more urbanized places. The village of there's many people who can raise a child, not just the mom and the dad. It's thanks to my village that my kids right now are thriving in the motherland, and I feel safe coming to do a tour and know that they'll be great when I get back home. So when I see moms or dads in America struggling alone, I'm like, we really need to focus on the village community as much as possible. It makes things easier. Mami and Pepe had lovingly created a book that contained a family tree made from images. This was a way to honor the tree of life, which represents lineage, a group of humans connected to a common ancestor. Trees within trees of Kosi and Yawa's family history were displayed like a living altar. An altar is a table or special area used to worship, protect, or honor something or someone. Looking at these images connected Kosi and Yawa to their ancestors, elders, and memories. There were also framed images of the almost twins from their birth up until their birthdays last year. This helped track their evolution as human beings as well as their growth. Mummy and Puppy had placed a special table in each of the almost twins' rooms where they could create an altar of their own, either for living family members, for those who had died, or for both. Have you ever created an altar before for a scholar? So that is a question I have for you. Raise your hand if you have created an altar before. Yay. Okay. Not yet. Not yet. Okay, that's great. You're at the right place. I'm going to help you know how to create an altar. So the woman in this image is my actual great grandmother, Mami Vovo. I have a picture of her that looks like that, where she's wearing her traditional outfit, and she's from Bina. She was a princess of Dahomey. I don't know if you heard the Woman King, but she was one of the princesses of that kingdom. So first, you want to decide what or whom you'd like to honor or celebrate. And it can be more than one person. It can be yourself, your younger self, your ancestors, your parents, your siblings. So your ancestors are family members, either your biological family or people you feel a strong connection to, who are no longer physically with us, but who are present with us spiritually. If you have specific ancestors with whom you feel a strong connection, or those you want to deepen your connection to, you may want to make a special place for them on your altar. You can also create living altars where you honor your current blood or soul family, such as your parents, siblings, grandparents, cousins, pets, and your own selves. So you'll choose a table in an area of your home or your house where you'd like the altar to be. Ideally, this would be a spot that doesn't have too much activity around it because altars are about purifying and protecting energy with the help of your spirit guide. So you can purify your space through lighting incense around the altar, ideally with a trusted adult who will help you. And you could put a white tablecloth on the altar, or if you prefer, you could choose a kente cloth for the table, which is what Yawa and Kosi had done. So your altar should make you feel joyful when you look at it and when you're near it. So take your time deciding its location and giving it the vibe that you want. So on the altar, you'll choose mementos or special objects that help you feel connected with whatever or whomever you choose to honor. This could be a portrait of that person, their favorite perfume. My grandma really liked Chanel number 5, so I have a little bottle of Chanel number 5 on my altar. I miss her so much, but I feel her all the time. Her name is Michelle. It could be their favorite accessory or whatever feels right to you. So Yawa placed a portrait of her great great grandmother Bobo on her altar because her mother often told her that they had similar temperaments and that they looked alike. Yeah, just like Rita looks exactly like her mom, and I saw an image of her mom yesterday. I'm like, that's basically you. So make sure the elements of air, water, fire, earth, and minerals are present on the altar in some way. So air could be adding a feather. I don't know if y'all know, but feathers are symbols for the ancestors. So if you see them on the floor or something, it's like your ancestors giving you a sign that they're there. Water, it's really good to always have a fresh glass of water on your altar, ideally in a cup that you can see through because water is one of the most OG original sources of spirituality. We all come from water. We were in the womb in water. The world is filled with water. 70% of this globe is water. I would recommend changing the water regularly, so at least once a week. If you go more than a week, it sounds like your ancestors saying, "Hey, like we're a little thirsty for some fresh water, please." Um, Fire, so you can light a candle or just have a candle there even if you don't light it, and that represents the fire element. But you could also decorate it with some string lights, and that could represent fire. Earth, so putting your favorite stone or jewel or gemstone or crystal on the altar is a great way to earth yourself. And then minerals can be like some sand from your favorite beach. Like if you make it to the motherland in a few years, you can take some sand and bring that to your altar. Oh gosh. So Yawa and Kosi, they loved creating their altars with some of the special items they had brought with them in their summer school bags. And they went to sleep at night surrounded by the protective energy of their parents and ancestors who were watching and praying over them. So I'm just going to read the last 2 pages of the prelude and then we'll get into questions and signings. At breakfast the next morning, Mami and Papi answered Yawa and Kosi's questions about what to expect at Forest Magic School. Will we like our teachers? Kosi asked as he drank his tapioca broth. Tapioca is a form of cassava made from its starch. When made as a breakfast broth, it has a pudding-like texture and a slightly bitter taste. You can add honey, lemon, fruit, blueberries, and it is just really delicious. I think the trees will be our teachers, Yawa excitedly shared. Maybe that's why it's called Forest Magic School. I also want to give a shout out to the illustrator of this book. There's a beautiful picture of Yawa meditating in front of a tree. There we go. So Cat Mouse James is the illustrator of Melanin Magic, and what I love about this is she is from Madagascar. So on the front cover of the book is the baobab tree, which is the tree of life in Africa, and it's the oldest tree. It's about 5,000 years old. It can grow to 5,000 years old, and the Africans view this as like a grandmother, grandfather, eternal tree that you never cut down. Like it's bad omen to cut down a baobab. And so I love that the book was able to have an African illustrator who understands the magic of the. I don't even think I told her to put a baobab on the cover. She herself read the book and was like, "There's going to be a baobab on the cover." So yes, Yawa says, "I think the trees will be our teachers." Maybe that's why it's called Forest Magic School. She broke up a piece of sweetbread and added some honey to it. Forest Magic School's been around for a while, Pappy said, as he poured more tapioca broth into Kosi's and Yawa's mugs made of natural clay. The trees are absolutely here to teach us, Yawa, and you'll soon see that there are many reasons we call this Forest Magic School. I'm like a tree, Yawa responded as she stretched her arms up toward the sky. Still growing. That you are. Let's go for a walking tour of the village after breakfast, Puppy suggested. I'm sure you'll find plenty of tree friends to grow with. Yawa and Percy have been to the village before. They visited their grandparents each summer. The forest always felt like a safe space to them, even with all the wild animals that lived among them. They never knew when they'd run into a group of chimpanzees crossing their path, or see a snake slithering, or bats flying across the night skies. They always knew there was a tree nearby for them to hug, talk to, or play with. They were familiar with the forest and its wonder, but there was more to explore. And this was the first summer they were attending Forest Magic School. As they left the cabin house, Papi reminded them that their 9-week adventure was an introduction to the world of African spirituality, which is all about learning and respecting the magic of Africa. They were ready to see what the magic was about. The magic is all around you, Papi calmly explained as they made their way down a long, winding path leading to the center of the village. Most of life's magic can be found in the simple things, especially what we tend to take for granted. Look around you, almost twins. What do you see? Kosi ran ahead of Yawa and Papi and observed the medicine woman collecting herbs from the community garden. Yawa played in the large puddles of water resting in the middle of her path. She remembered it was the rainy season. Pappy paused as he noticed 4 ant trails being formed before his eyes. The almost twins ran to his side and watched as the ants moved about busily, each performing their role in the larger community mission. As the family made their way to their favorite river in the center of the forest, Yawa and Pussy said hi to the tatas and tontons, which are Ivorian words for aunties and uncles. But it's not just Ivorian. Any French-speaking African country will use tonton and tata. Oh, y'all are familiar with that too? Oh, yay! So they might not actually be related to our family, but they still feel like family. So I have millions of any one of my parents' friends are my tonton and my tata. It's just as simple as that. And even like if you're a young kid in Africa and you go to the hairdresser, they'll say hi tata, hi tonton, like you want to say hi mister, hi ma'am. So it makes it more familiar. And so they noticed the tontons and the tatas hanging their clothes to dry on a clothesline, which is much more environmentally friendly. And that's the thing. I know I'm sounding like Dr. Sebi right here, but they're basically, people love to say that, Africa has a lot of, they don't realize that any kind of pollution that we see in Africa was brought from the Western world, but we are the OG, like green people, environmentally friendly. And I'd like us to go back to that. It's true that we have to do some deconditioning now in the major cities, but yeah, we dry our clothes on a clothesline. We can eat with cassava leaves. I talk about that in the book. We can eat with our hands, very clean. Our hands are the original knives and forks. We can walk barefoot. Now it's been a huge thing now, but the popular culture loves to say it's great for you. They love to say it's great for you, and the OG Africans didn't know it. So yes, I talk about all these things in this book. Goodness gracious. Um, Kosi was pleasantly distracted by the smell of yam chips being fried by the tata with her beautifully cornrowed hair, who was carrying her daughter on her back. Same thing. We now see carriers all the time. OG Africa, the original baby carriers. To get to Forest Magic School, they had to cross a bridge over the river, then wait patiently for the school to appear from behind a seemingly endless amount of banana trees and their leaves, which swayed in the wind. But the Forest Magic School building only appeared when classes were in session. The Amos twins had to wait a bit longer. This is the path you'll take each day to get to Forest Magic School. You're just one night away from entering the ancestral portal, Happy said as he smiled at his grandchildren. Are you ready? We're ready, Yawa and Pussy explained. What about you, Forest Scholar? Are you ready too? Yay! So that is the prelude. Thank you so much. Thank you. So now that you have seen that introduction, I really recommend taking your time with this book. It's not the type of book that I expect people to read in 2 days, but to pace themselves with, to pause and read with family, to research more. In the book, the kids have space pads. We call them space pads because we want to acknowledge that technology can open doors to learning, but we don't want you to become dependent on it. So the space pads, they will stop in the middle of someone reading for a while. They won't be unlimited use. And that's usually the universe, the cosmos, the energy of Forest Magic School telling the scholar to check in with their own ori, to not be overly dependent on technology. I think that's important for our newest generation, and even as parents, I have to follow that own advice and follow and show that example to my children, Nova and Ren. So I'm so grateful for your attention, and I'd love to open it up to any questions you might have about African spirituality, about the journey, or any ideas or thoughts you have, and then I'd love to sign your books and wrap it up. Yes, absolutely.
Oh,
Yes.
oh, I didn't know it was gonna. Okay. Okay. Oh, hello.
Hi. What's your name?
My name's Tim.
Tim. Yes.
Yeah. I'd like to know. My mother does the 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 plant represents like a human, and I know that I've been doing some research on the family history, and it looks like on her mother's at least 5-7 generations back into Nigeria when I think of the houses. And
Hausa?
yes.
Okay,
Oh,
nice.
thank you for
Yes.
And do you know? Do they do that? Basically, the plants represent human.
Oh yes, yes. So for Hausa spirituality, there's a whole, it's a different segment than Yoruba, but there are some interconnections. I don't know if it's one specific plant that represents a human, but there's I would say a blend of different herbologies that represent different parts of the human body that I'm aware of. But do you know specifically which plant she was referring to?
Don't know. I know she picked a plant, one for my grandmother, one for my aunt.
Okay. So yeah, that particular plant that she might have picked, I'm not aware of, but I do know that they connect different parts of the body with different plants. But I'm not sure about what plant she might have been talking about.
Just any plant, basically.
Oh, any plant.
Yeah, basically, yeah, the process of that.
Oh, and what was this recent or years ago that she did this?
I think she did this. She's been doing this a while, but I just remember. I think it may be like a month or 2 months ago that yeah.
One thing that I also know about plants in the sacred forests of Benin is there are times where the mythologies explain that previous kings who had to escape or save themselves were transformed into trees, and their energy remained in that tree. So that's why it's a sacred forest, because people go there and give offerings to that tree. And so the trees, even when we think about the fact that we regenerate and die, technically, yes, the energy of humans exists in trees, and so that I love that. I love that connection between trees and humans. That's a good question, and I'm gonna look more for the specific Awusa because I didn't actually talk enough about Awusa in this one. There's so many different cultures, it would be impossible to cover all of them. I focus more on Yoruba and Kemetic, but I have some Hausa ancestry myself, so I'll even ask my mom about that afterwards. Do you have a question? Oh, yay! Thank you.
Thank you very much for the
presentation. For the ancestors, for the ancestors.
So, my name is Amate, and then I'm currently a PhD student at Harvard University. And so, I really like the conversation that surrounds plants and herbs, etc. And I think I see a lot of excellence or a lot of richness when it comes to African traditional or African medicines. Because, for instance, recently when I went back home to Ghana, my grandmother had a visitor, and there was this woman who was going to be delivered. And she says when she went to the hospital, the doctor was asking that she goes through a cesarean section because the place was tight and she couldn't go back from there. And so she comes home to my grandmother and says, this is the situation, but she doesn't want to go through the cesarean section. And so my grandmother goes to the back of our house and then get this plant and then bring it to this woman and said, oh, drop it in water. Anytime you feel thirsty and drink. Within 2 days, the lady did it. In 2 days, the place was open, and she went back to the hospital to do that. So I see I see that potency, that uniqueness, that richness of African culture and medicine, and I think it's really about time people really engage in it. Like we have to know more about our plants because yes. I think there's more for us to offer to the world and the world things. My question is, how do you distinguish between spirituality and then religion?
Oh, wow. That's a great question. And Ghana, I'm from Togo, so we're neighbors. Yay. That's a really beautiful question. So Ifa is the Yoruba religion associated with its culture, and people can there's different ways that you can practice Ifa. Some people choose to be initiated in it. I haven't been initiated in it. But when they're initiated, they go through a several months long process of connecting and choosing to, I would say the way people go through Catholicism and Christianity and choose to follow that road, people will choose to follow and become followers of the Ifa religion. For spirituality, the way I particularly distinguish it is you can take concepts from a certain religion and integrate it in your life in a way that feels good to your spirit. Spirituality is more about feeling connected to the cosmos and to the source in a way that might not be limited to a specific religion. Spirituality can also understand the commonality between all religions and understand that they all come from the same source. Spirituality looks very different to every individual. And so for me, especially when it comes to Yoruba, one of the reasons I didn't feel like I needed to be initiated is because I didn't want it to feel like I had to just choose one certain path, where there's many other things, including Buddhist spirituality, even some elements of Catholicism that resonate, because I was raised with a Christian Catholic background as well. And in West Africa, what's also really important is there's a lot of people who will be practicing Christians and Catholics, but still connected to their indigenous spirituality. And there's two different forms of those people. There's those who do it out of, because of the indoctrination that they should just follow Western religion, they do it secretly. So they'll be outwardly Christian and Catholic and then still go to see the medicine woman or go consult with the babalawo. But there's those who do it very proudly, very much in Benin is the center of where I would say they are able to balance both with pride. They can go to church and then they can very openly go and talk to indigenous healers or consult with cowrie shells to help guide their life. So spirituality and religion, they can run parallel to each other, but spirituality, I think, is unique to connecting with your spirit in a way that feels good to you. And it can look different for everyone. My dad would often say for him, he prefers praying in the shower, but the water, the element of water, which represents our energy, our connection to source, soothes him and allows him to feel very close to God more than when he goes to a church. So yes, spirituality is more like as you slow down, meditate, breathe, listen to yourself, listen to your intuition, your own spirit will tell you what it needs to feel nourished. And sometimes it's ancestral, sometimes it's connected to what your grandparents did, your parents did, and sometimes it's something you discover on your own through the journey of life. Is there anyone else who would want to answer their views on that? Because it's a collective answer, really.
Nah, first and foremost, I appreciate you for this. Uh, in general, just approaching the perspective for the youth, for all the youth, them that where they can find someone that looks like themselves inside of you. To answer your question, it makes me think of how like the Europeans wanted to separate religion and spirit so much. When it's like a natural syncretism that I see like our grandmas had like the Africans. They I don't even want to say always African, but the human of source always takes back, derived through any deception, derived through any way like that we think like religion limits us in certain ways. My grandmother, she was a very religious person, but it wasn't through any of the Abrahamic religions. She had a lot of tattoos on her face, and they prayed to a tree. When you said tree and plant, that had me thinking a lot. The tree never had no leaves that would fall under it. Why? It was a certain energy that reminds me like we can still channel beyond, even though we might see religion or we need the Abrahamic religion as a crutch, whether it's Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, we can still put our own layer of spirit back into it that takes us back to source. So I definitely feel you when even trying to decipher it at times, but I've given up a fight on deciphering it as FC's where spirit leads me through all of it. And just to also embrace where other people use that frequency and dance the channel to the higher self as well. Which is why I brought my sister here to make sure that she's not losing herself in that dance. Like, I missed it all. But that's where we are. I like, we all on the journey back to it. But all pieces of God will Mama soon figuring out herself on this journey of flows. But I like that. But I feel like we don't need to keep separating it though either. It's gonna always be through. But thank you for that question.
Yeah, that's a great question. Anyone else have anything to say or add?
Oh, I have a question.
Yes, yes.
I have a question about the spirituality, the Santi.
Yes.
Yes. Can you tell me more about that?
So the Akon is Baoule culture in Cote d'Ivoire, and it also has connections to Ghana. There is the queen, the Baoule queen, Ablapoku. And Ablapoku, when there was the tribal wars, Ablapokou. When there were tribal wars between present day Ghana and present day Cote d'Ivoire, Ablapoku had to take her people from Ghana and bring them to current day Cote d'Ivoire. What happened there is that there was a river that had to be crossed, but there was blockages that made it that there was not an easy crossing. And the people who unfortunately were zeroing in on them, their tribal enemies at the time, were getting closer. So they had to consult. So they had to consult the ancestors and ask, what do we do to get across? Abdakoku had struggled in conceiving her only child, a son. And the ancestors said, you must sacrifice your son in the river. I remember as a mom, I heard this and I was like, oh, absolutely not. I'm sorry to my people, but no. But that's not what she did. She viewed it as the ancestors have spoken. And so she did. She sacrificed her son in the river. I like to view it as the river took care of her son. So I don't think it was like just death and bye-bye. It was like regeneration, spiritual protection. The river is Oshun, and Oshun is deeply protective. So I view it now as, okay, there was a reason for this. So there's a lot of mystery in this tale. And when she was able to do that, a path opened and wooden branches fell and they were able to cross the river to present-day Cote d'Ivoire, and that's where how the Akon and the Baoulé of Cote d'Ivoire existed. But because they're so close to Ghana, it wasn't just like everyone went there. There's still Akon people in Ghana as well. There's so much similarities in between both. So actually, the Akon is a matriarchal culture, and a lot of things are passed down from the mother. And people are sometimes forgetting that in Cote d'Ivoire, but we have to get back to remembering that. And For the Asante, I know more about the Baule culture than the Asante, but I do know that they're very connected to their royal hierarchy as well, and making sure that they keep names and keep stories and keep tales passed down from one child, one parent to their child. They really don't want to. They feel very proud as a people. They're very proud people, and people respect them a lot because of the connection they have to their heritage. Same with the Akon of Bauli. I've seen this river and crossed it before knowing that it was the river of Ablakugu. And when I crossed it, interestingly, to get to my grandma's funeral during the COVID times, the borders were closed. So I had to go through this river with a special guide. And I remember thinking, why is the energy so strong? It's so, so strong. What happened here? And then months later, I heard that that was the river where the Akon people crossed to get to Cote d'Ivoire. So if you ever come to Cote d'Ivoire, going to the border between Cote d'Ivoire and Ghana, that is the origin story of that conflict.
Um, I like how you reminded about the major focal religion. Well, major focal civilization aspect too, because uh, I think that's why I align so much with like a lot of. I guess in school I realized studying even patriarchy, like this patriarchy society has only existed for the last 5,000 years. So a lot of this stuff with like Babylon in the way like Eurocentric society praises the fatherly, praises the patriarch, but always wouldn't resonate with me well. Like I would feel weird, like just with certain, certain roots of Amen, like just weird, like just putting a certain deed in the side and energy on myself. So I guess in our journey back to the divine feminine, like Mami Wata, like all the flows, that's more my motivation reminded me with that. Because when I was born in the crop, I wasn't born with like a junior behind my name. But me and my dad got the same name. It's because like they honor more of the male, the woman being named after they honor more of the woman being named after the mother than the son being named after the father. Because that ain't really nothing but like back in Ghana, it's more of a connection to that. So that's more of my motivation reading this book as well too.
Thank you. And he's from Liberia, which is my country, my neighboring country. One thing I wanted to share as well about the religion and spirituality piece is we have to keep in mind, and I'll wrap it up. This is already 3:05. Time is going so quickly. I've been loving this, and I want to get to the signing as well. But we have to keep in mind that when our ancestors were taken from Africa and brought by force to the Americas, it was because Orishas are just one example of spiritual, supernatural beings who we can learn from, grow from, and be protected by. So many different African cultures have their own version of Orishas. They might not call it Orishas, but they have deities connected to nature. So I would say the Orishas followed us in this transatlantic enslavement trade. And even when the colonizers and enslavers forced us to convert by force to their religion, the Virgin Mary, for example, was for people who were honoring the Virgin Mary, in their mind, many of them were still thinking of Yemaya, Yemosha. And even all the millions of people who ended up in the bottom of the ocean, that was in Yemosha's world that they were. So the fact that the ocean is so mysterious and 99% of it has been unexplored, it could be that the spirits, just like the sacrificed son of Ablakuku became the spirit, there could be a whole spirit world down there that's connected to our ancestors who continue living in new ways. So religion could be a conduit for spirituality in the sense of even if you were honoring more Western Abrahamic religions, you were connecting them to indigenous ancestry, whether you did it consciously or not. So the Orishas and the equivalent of Orishas across African cultures came with us to the Americas. And what's really trippy is if you go to Brazil, Salvador da Bahia, you will see that they honor the Orishas outwardly in the streets everywhere. So it feels like a Harry Potter world, really. It really is very trippy. And they do it more than the Nigerians and the Beninese themselves that the Orishas derive from. Unfortunately, because of conditioning, the Nigerians and the Beninese aren't always proudly talking about the Orishas. But in Brazil, where there's a high population of enslaved African descendants, they will outwardly honor them and celebrate them. And it shows just how strongly the connection has remained. So I'm hoping that this book continues to strengthen that connection. And I thank all of you for your presence and support. So I appreciate it. Yay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is the book for sale now?
Yes, it's up front and next to the Ta-Nehisi Coates book, which I'm grateful for. It is for sale up there. And I'd be happy to sign it to anyone who'd like it signed. We'll take a few pictures.
Question. Before we disperse, can I get a group picture
a
of
group
you
picture,
with
a
the
group
audience?
picture. A great idea. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
A group picture. So what should they?
Up here, I feel like?
Everybody come up here. Everybody who'd like to be part of the picture. Bree, I don't know where you are. Yes, picture. So emotional. Please come through, please. Mr. Ghana.
Alright, and I want y'all close like you have each other.
Yes. Yes, thank you. Yes, thank you. This is like a village, my DC village. Y'all could have been anywhere on the country, and you're here. So great.
Alright, so are you ready? 1, 2, 3. Beautiful.
Thank you.
So much.
Sorry, doing signings. You have to write a pen. Oh! You remind me of Gina. Yeah. Let me give you my phone so I can get
You tell that African man to give up his mother's religion to know that he's good in this life.
She reminds me of me. I know. I am so beautiful. It's like the universe is so sweet. Pen is coming very shortly. But in the meantime, is there any part that you're thinking?
I think she just finished up.
Oh yeah. As we speak.
Yeah.
I was wondering, oh, you're doing this today?
Yeah.
Thank you. A little. A lot. Oh, you're a poet.
Oh yeah, her book talk next.
What does that mean?
She like the art, she like to do all that.
I started writing around it.
That's hard on my
Oh, okay. So is that like a series? No, I Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
Are you ready? Yeah. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye.
Oh, thank you. You're dressed like Melanin. What's your name? Geronda. And how did your hair come this? In DC or in this room? Me too. That's my first time here too. Isn't that energy great? Thank you for coming. Of course. Yeah, your nephews are nieces. Are they youngish? How do I spell your name? Oh, wonderful. Have you been to Africa? Yeah, I kind of traveled in. Yeah, I mean, trips that are immersive to build the Ghana and now we're from school to Ghana area. Yeah. I'm gonna put it on my Oh wow, congratulations. That was this year. But do you travel like you travel? Where are you?
Right here on this side.
Alright. Thank you. Well, yeah, you have. You said San Diego? So yeah, you did the whole thing. I did California too for grad. I didn't get a chance to meet you. So you say you went to Japan. Yeah, it's been there this whole time. It's like super happy. Yeah. Excuse me. Fast train.
I know you're funny.
Yeah. Oh, well, in that case, we're gonna make the Melanin happen. And I would year did you look for him? And all of the information is 2019. We have the residency program for next year. We're gonna put up registration. And that was a big article. Even if you like here, you don't mind more. No, I don't. I'll have to was she really fair skinned with the lot of I know her, but not. She took pictures. No, everybody I've met here feels like I've met her. Yes, she went to USC with Bill Sanders. And she definitely can melt the mountain sport and natural energy. Yeah, but it might not be your yeah, I met her. Such a small room. Merci.
Oh, that was before you were born.
Thank you. Enjoy homecoming weekend. And what years did I'll hold you back? Thank you for coming. Great. Everybody's energy is just so loving.
I went to Cote d'Ivoire, but
Experience.
it wasn't super.
Yeah, was that your, so was Magic and Melanin your first trip?
Well, you can make it out to Kobe, K-O-B-I.
Is it?
No, Tim.
Oh, so your Kobe is him.
No, Kobe, Kobe Asante, Kumasi, Masako.
That's your full name?
That's what name I gave myself.
Oh, okay.
S-A-N-T.
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. My father's side, I believe my mother's side.
So, were you in DC? Honestly, walking distance, but not today. Today, I did drive over here. But I parked about a 10-minute walk away. I was able to stand up. Okay, a spot. Yeah.
Well,
I used to buy it.
Yeah, I can fix your safety and finish the short.
all we have to do is
That makes sense.
What made you walk from here?
I think it's K.
Over here, this from
Oh, yeah.
you.
K-A-S-I.
Yeah.
It says, and I would understand the girls, so you'll also see it K-O-U and A-S-I.
Yeah. Okay.
Right around the way. My mom
Yeah, I didn't get the long story. It took me.
There was a reason we went.
Yes.
And I agree. It was real sweet. I know. This is about starting traffic.
That would be incredible. Does they have any participants that brought their children? And I think that's like my answer.